Ready.
All right, hey everybody. Appreciate you joining us tonight. We're gonna try something a little different this time. D2 has approved. Well, I guess it's approved nationally because it's the rule. But for the last two seasons,
Just one season. It was last year was our first one.
so last year the MIAA, the D2 MIAA, experimented with basically the replay process that was approved in the rule book for instant replay without an instant replay official. And so I know that it sounded like a little more than half of the D2 leagues have adopted it for this season, based on what I heard at some of the clinics I've been to. So I thought it would be a good idea to have somebody on with some experience in this particular process to talk through kind of what this looks like, talk about, from a referee's perspective, talking about from the sideline official's perspective, because, we're dealing with now all those quiz questions you had to answer about replay are actually applicable to what you have to do. So I'll turn over to Brian Stelzer. Brian's a referee in the MIAA, and he's going to kind of walk us through it. So Brian, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you asking me to do this. I do hope that it's going to be beneficial for anybody, not just referees, but everybody that's adopting the new process. So my hope, my plan for this is kind of give us a chance to answer any burning questions for you, give you a little bit of how it worked in the MIAA, as well as just give you some actual plays to look at as to what kind of camera angles you're going to get. So once again, I'm Brian Stelzer. I am a fourth year referee in the MIAA. And so, yeah, it was our first year doing it. I had a really good success. So we'll get in kind of some of the pieces. This should be review for everybody with Rule 12. This was what just came out this year. Referees the sole decision maker. We can and do consult one other official as part of the review process. Ultimately, it's going to be up to your supervisor as to who that person's going to be. Last year in the MIAA, we did it with the calling official, went with the referee to be that second set of eyes and answer questions when asked. This year, we've made the decision to be a little more consistent. And so we're going to have the back judge come with us every single time we go to a replay. Again, more for a consistency standpoint for who I'm going to be working with on a weekly basis. It also kind of falls in line with what most of the Division I conferences are doing. Key pieces, system has to be away from the teams. In practice, that's a little different for each school. It's always outside of the team bench areas, typically towards an end zone. For running purposes, you kind of hope it's not all the way in the end zone, depending on where you're at. But I'll talk about more of that in a little bit. And then the key exceptions to how we usually see replay on the Division I level, with being the stoppage side. We're going to stop it for any and all called targeting fouls. And then if it's anything else, it has to come through coach's challenge. That includes if they think it's targeting, or if it's big enough and we just don't call it and they want to challenge it. That's the biggest exception from what the Division I level is. Coaches cannot challenge targeting. At our level, they can if it's not called. Once we call it, though, we're automatically under the hood and taking looks at it. There is absolutely no other method of stoppage in the Division II level. I did work in the Kansas Jayhawk, the JUCO conference. They play by their own rules and they can do officials reviews themselves. But for in Division II, that's it. Like if there's no coaches challenge available, then we simply cannot review anything else besides targeting if we called it. It does kind of lend to us, how do we change the game? That's one of the things we talked about a lot preseason, especially at our level when we're not reviewing every single play because we don't have a replay official. We don't want to change the way we call the game. It's all about trying to be right 100% of the time, make replay unnecessary, because we don't want to have a coach be forced into a challenge that he may or may not want to or need to use in that minute. We're trying to be right all the time. So we do kind of take a grain of salt with the when in doubt principles that Division I has. So again, just kind of a piece there. So for us, again, it's one per game. They have to have an available timeout to do that. So with that rule change about multiple timeouts in the same dead ball period, that's all going to be a piece of this too. So if they use a challenge and then they lose that challenge and the timeout, well, if they come out and they decide they needed to call a timeout again because they get the wrong formation or they only have 10 guys out there, well, the challenge is that timeout, so they don't have one available. If they do have the challenge upheld, they are successful, then they get to get one more on top of it. So maximum 2 per team. If they get the first one right, is kind of how it works. In my experience last year, we only ever got one. Even if we had a successful challenge, that team really didn't choose to do another. And so I'll get into that next. Because you're wondering, I'm sure, like, okay, you did this, what was it look like? These are the hard numbers straight from Quick Ref. Got this from our Quick Ref coordinator. And these are exactly what we did. So you can see we had 54 different stoppages in 66 games. So that's not even a stoppage per game. It's a little under that. I had several games where I didn't have a single challenge, which is very nice. I didn't have any targeting for me, but as you can see in our league, we had 11 called and then obviously all reviewed. And only 4 of the 11 were confirmed, which was really the selling point for why we went into this in the first place. We didn't want to have to wait until halftime to get in this case, 7 players back in the game. We could go do this and then have those 7 come back in the game right away. And so that's where we saw a lot of the buy-in come from this, and especially from coaches and administrators, was let's get them back in the game. And then also be able to kind of review that for safety purposes and give us as officials a chance to go ahead and throw the flag that we don't necessarily need that second person to absolutely see it. We can just say that's targeting, go look at it and come back. So again, it might jump out at you. We had 25 confirmed. You're thinking probably, oh, okay, we have the high end zone and we have the 50-yard line view for all 22, but there are ways with this system that you can really magnify it a lot using the iPad. You kind of zoom in using that scrub function, and it's really nice. They're getting better still. They're using higher quality equipment now, so they can actually get a better picture still than we did last year. And so even in some of the scrimmages we're seeing, we very well might have more confirmed in addition to the stands. And so we did have a handful of overturns, and that just happens to be where it kind of ends up. So yeah, we had quite a few confirmed, and but just not that many out of the game. So what I would say to anyone in the Division 2 or Division 3 level that's adopting this, it's an important thing to know, and especially with what is reviewable and what is not. It's not going to take over your game. I think it needs to be just as important as part of this conversation. You may not have it in one of your games. So with that, I'm going to kind of switch over to a different side of things. The system that we use now is called SkyCoach. If you're interested in what that is, I'm going to drop this in the chat quick. The system is completely run through these people. They have a special one. You can't actually Google search it. You have to know this link. So it's myskycoach.com/officials a replay. And it actually goes into the MIAA experience. We as the officials don't care too much about what the actual equipment is. That's more about the teams. It's not terribly expensive, but for us, the MIAA provides an iPad for us as referees, which ends up being the backup for the schools that should have their own iPads. That's already set up, already good to go. The system, the way it works, you have to be on your own Wi-Fi, log in, and then get to the school, and then it's a closed Wi-Fi system that you have to have that username and password to get into that Wi-Fi on the field. And then the other nice part for us is we don't have to wait for the huddle video to come up. We have it on the iPad on the drive home. This is the system. We'll play this here real quick, just kind of give you an idea of what it looks like in the minute to show, what does a replay look like on the field. So this was at Washburn. It's in Topeka, Kansas, for those that are not familiar with the MIAA, between them and Pittsburgh State. And this is just kind of how the review came in. I'm going to mute it because Jason Kazar, the contact for SkyCoach, is talking over it. We came out, we make an announcement and say, previous plays under further review. This happens to be a catch, no catch on the sideline. You see there, they've already got the play pulled up for us. Referee David Burge comes running over. In some cases, it's a further run than that. We might be going from opposite end zone, but in all of the ones we took, we averaged about 2 minutes from when we made the announcement and then made the ball ready for play for the next play. So we just came over. You can see on this, he's just kind of starting, stopping. I'll show that through a little bit. Scrubs it. You see how big it gets, big like that. And then you got to make a decision quickly. So from a usability standpoint, it's really straightforward, really easy. And it's just, again, being a little bit familiar with technology, you can come out and you do it before in the pregame to get used to the buttons and where they're at. And then off you go. The other piece I pulled up so that you can actually see what it looks like from a, of course, ads. So you can see it from a user standpoint. What does that screen look like? Sorry, should have done the ads ahead of time. This is exactly what the iPad screen is going to look like. You've got your rewind forward. You've got the time frames that you can do it at 25% speed, 50% speed. They've added a couple of things that is not on this older system, or this is the coach's view, that they have a frame by frame button that you can just tap. And so it does literally go frame by frame. So you can go super slow. And that's really, really helpful for us. You see that it's got 3 different angles. Last year, MIAA only had 2. And the other nice part about this was when you went from the sideline view and you wanted to go to the end zone view, it goes to the exact moment that we have it stopped in the play. So when you switch over to the different view, you don't actually have to go timing wise again. Speeds up the process quite a bit. If you're zoomed in, you do have to pull back out and then find where you're at on the screen. But as far as timing goes, you're in the exact same moment. So I'll show you a play later where I used that personally on a catch, no catch, because I knew I lost the view from the end zone and I had a clear view from the sideline. So I backed it up a little bit, switched to the other view and saw it from that angle. So again, that it's a little bit about just getting used to iPads, how they work, using the touch screens. Play starts and stops just by pushing the middle of the screen, and you find a blank space and it'll just start playing. But this is kind of what it looks like from a user's interface standpoint and things like that. So that's one piece of it. Let's see, back to the slideshow. And then it's just really about talking about what Nick and I said ahead of time is talking with your sideline officials. I at the JUCO camp this last couple of weeks ago, we had some Big 12 officials there talking about replay to JUCO guys that have never worked a college football game in their life. And what does instant replay look like? And it's really important for our sideline officials to just know what's reviewable and what's not. Be able to communicate what that initial ruling is, and then also know if that play is reviewable. They can challenge all they want, but much like we do on at the division level, Division 1 level that I've heard in other calls, is we're going to talk to them so that they know, hey, that's either already being reviewed in the D1 level. Well, for us, it's hey, this is a reviewable play. Understand that these are where the cameras are. That's a conversation we have early in the season with our coaches. Most of them know where our 2 cameras are. The start of the season this year, we're adding that 3rd camera. They're going to want to know where that is. And so that's going to be part of our conversation to start the game. Say, all right, if that's in the end zone opposite the scoreboard, you probably aren't going to have a look. So use your challenge at your own risk.
I think that's a really good point, Brian. And I think that, I don't want to say that I would, if I were working in Division II, that I would want to be in a position where I was talking a coach out of a challenge of a play that was reviewable. So I would be really cautious about how I approach that, but I would make sure that the coaches understood where, to Brian's point, where we're looking. You know, if a coach wants to challenge a line to gain, and that line to gain is like at the 5, but the camera's a high 50, you know, or a high end zone, and you know, getting a line to gain from a high end zone is probably not going to be very helpful unless it's really obvious that we screwed something up.
Right.
But you know, we've really got to make sure that we understand, you know, where we would be looking, so he's not shocked if he decides he still wants to press on, because some coaches are just upset and want to challenge because they want to make a point. You know, that is a thing that happens too, I'm sure. So, but you know, we want to set expectations, I think is a better way to think about it than like, nah, I wouldn't challenge that if I were you because of X and Y. That's not a good way to approach that conversation. Much more like, all right, coach, well, that is reviewable, and the cameras, as you know, are there and there if you want to take a look at it. And I think that would be that's a better plan. But that also means that in the pregame with the referees, and I'm sure, and Brian will probably touch on this a little bit, the referees got to let us know where the cameras are.
Yes.
Because especially if we get more than, like, if there are 2, I'm sure we could all take a pretty good guess as to where the 2 cameras are. But if we get to more than 2, we have to have an understanding of that.
Yep. And yeah, you're right, Nick. It's the 2 are easy. It's our 2 traditional huddle views, or DV Sport, like high in the end zone, high on the sideline. But yeah, it's got to be that conversation. Our coaches, to start the year, talked a big game about how, oh, I'm not going to challenge anything because this videos, there's no way it's going to be able to see it. And in the heat of the moment, they throw their challenge flag, because we do use it. We have a challenge flag in the MIAA. They'll do it anyway. They're like, well, I'm going to do it because it's a big moment, or anything. In some cases, there are plays where it's literally end of the game. If I don't challenge this line to gain and just let it go, will I lose anyway because the clock's about to run out? Might as well go for it, right? There's all those kind of reasons why coaches do things. Sometimes it was just to say, hey, I want to make you guys go do this. And early in the season, they wanted to see how it would work, just like we did. The other upside was they ended up saving timeouts till the end of the game, and so we didn't use all of the timeouts they had available. The other key piece of this that I think I would be remiss if I didn't state it early and then again later, because of where our cameras are and because we don't have a superimposed clock, we do not have any timing aspect of review. So even if the clock runs when it shouldn't, we can't fix it as part of replay because we can't see it. So we're not going to see the scoreboard. We're not going to have a superimposed clock. And so any and all timing is off the table.
Does that mean that if replay would trigger a runoff, that is not, you're not involved in that because you can't reset the clock and take 10?
Correct. So anything timing related, whether that's putting time back on the clock because it should have stopped and didn't, or doing a 10-second runoff simply because it was a review, wouldn't be a thing. Now, and part of that, the 10-second runoff can't happen in our case because you have to have a timeout available, and they're going to get charged it in that piece. So we don't really have to worry about that 10-second piece because if it's late in the game and there would have been a 10-second runoff, they have to have a timeout to stop it and therefore review it. The targeting, that's us. Like it's an official stoppage, so it's just like calling any other foul and stopping the clock too. So from that side of things, yeah, that kind of limits our need for that rule in Division II. But just as importantly, hey, that clock ran 15 seconds and we're under a minute. I need every second I can get. Sorry, coach. That's where I said, like I led in earlier. We just have to be good at our jobs and pretend like replay is not there to save us. It's just to have another tool in our tool belt. So I did bring in a rules question because I think it also helps in a replay process, because my crew was reviewing the national championship game in Division II, and this was a play from that game in the punt, and we talked about knowing what's reviewable. So here's your rules question for the day, and I will ask anyone that wants to, other than Nick, because I'm sure he knows the rule. to provide some feedback. So A 4th and 14 from the A 34. A 99 punts the ball and it's a low trajectory kick, lands at the 50, and then A 15 and B 30 are running side by side without contact down the field when the ball gets close to them. The ball bounces up and contacts A 15. I should have read B 15. That's the return team. So sorry for my editing. I did this earlier today. Hits the return team at approximately the same time the block happens. So inverse these. A 30 blocks B 15 towards the ball, and the headline judge rules that the ball contacted B 15 prior to the block. So the ruling on the field is a touch by R and recovery by K. What is reviewable in this?
I'll take a rough stab at it. My understanding, I think the actual whether the ball is touched by B or not is reviewable. I don't believe whether the block calls the force touching or the timing of the touching is reviewable, but I think whether the ball actually did touch the B player or not is reviewable.
Yes. So touching is reviewable. And so if a coach comes up and says, I want to challenge that, this is part of that. We need to be able to know the rules and say, what do you want to challenge, coach? Oh, he was blocked into that. That is not a reviewable play. If you want to challenge whether or not he even touched it, we can do that, but we will not be able to review blocked into. So very important pieces of that. So again, so sorry that my letters are backwards, but again, I thought it was a good piece for it. Did this not save? Oh, there it goes. I just copied and pasted. So some reviewable plays just to give you the bullet points, and then I'm going to go into some actual video and then open it up for discussion. Quick bullet points of we challenge anytime we throw a targeting foul, we are going to review it. It can also be challenged. Scoring plays are there for touchdowns or safeties, and we can review those. Field goal attempts, if it's below the top of the upright, we can review whether or not that truly did go between the uprights. Passes, whether it's complete, incomplete, intercepted, forward pass handing, after change of possession, if there's forward pass, forward backward pass in general, we can review. Intentional grounding spots, we can go back and review. We can get into the dead ball and loose ball side of things, whether that's a pass fumble with an empty hand. We can review that fumble if we have an immediate clear continuing action. I had 2 of those last year. Both you just kind of get more patient with it. So I may very well review or may very well make this an incomplete pass, but I'm going to take that extra second, especially if there's a possibility of a clear recovery, to let that happen and then make it an incomplete pass, just so that we have that in our back pocket. Again, a bunch more in there.
Brian, specifically related to that intentional grounding spot, you were speaking specifically about intentional grounding in the vicinity of the goal line.
Yes, sorry. This is a highly simplified.
Yeah, right.
Just
want to make sure everybody's on the same page. You can't just review wherever we think the spot of the pass was, because first of all, I don't know that I would think that a coach would challenge that for a 2 to 3 yard difference.
2 yards, yeah.
What we're dealing with, we called it a safety, and actually the coach wants to challenge that the pass was from the field of play or vice versa. But that's the reviewable components.
Which was part of the CFO test this year, was where can we review this if it's in relation to the goal line? Answer is all of the above. Yeah. So there you go. Again, recoveries, fumbles, kicks, whether it's been touched. So that's into our rule question example. Was it touched? Was it not? Nothing about the blocking into, but blocking by a kicking team before eligible. You're late in the game and you have somebody do an onside kick. This could be something they would review from or challenge from that side. The other piece of that touching with a kick that I had And it was really a good tool to diffuse some situations with coaches where you rule a punt was tipped and therefore there's no roughing the kicker. Well, you have to make that announcement so that everyone knows that. But coach asks, hey, can I review that? You come up and say, yes, coach, you can review whether the ball was touched. And then we would put it on there. And then in my coach situation, he just thought about it for a second because he knew what kind of film quality we had, and then said, nah, let's just play football. So it's another tool again in our tool belt that we can use to augment our ability to officiate the game, and it does a really good job that way, especially when we know what we can review and not, because the coaches then feel better, like they can hold us accountable too.
I think too, and Brian, again, just to reemphasize the point here, right? Like we want to be in a situation where Brian doesn't have to come over and have that conversation as a referee,
right?
Because we want the game to move along. Like we're gonna go like we're not stopping the game unless they decide they want to challenge. But that means that the wings have to be communicating with the coach to make that choice. So we don't just like stand around and wait for him to decide to challenge or not. We need to have the conversation as we're moving the spot and we're getting the next spot to get ready to start the next series and all that kind of stuff, so that we can be in a position to keep the game going. Because otherwise we're going to just hang around and not play. And we certainly don't want that.
No. And we had the conversation because we use a challenge flag. That challenge flag doesn't mean, hey, I want you to come talk to me. Once that's on the field, we're giving you a timeout, whether you actually decide to challenge it or not. In most cases, they only threw it like after they said, yeah, I'm going to do that. And we knew it was coming anyway. So, and then a few miscellaneous ones in there, like with position of ball related to the goal line. That's specifically with our intentional grounding, number of players on the field. If they are adamant we had 12, they can challenge that. We can go look at it. If we messed up the downs, we can go fix that too, as well as non-player interfering with a live ball. I sincerely hope I don't see that one, but and then again, not reviewable for us. Timing is not reviewable. Field goal above the uprights, spot in relation that's not in relation to the line of the gain. Specifically one like, oh, he didn't gain 6 yards, he gained 7 yards. Well, it's nowhere near the first down, so we don't care, coach. And then loose ball when it's not recovered in immediate continuing action. Like again, it's a patience that you build up because you know this is what I'm going to rule, but I might just take that extra half a second. It's not going to affect the game too much if I let that ball get recovered when I know it's about to be immediate. So, all right. So getting to the huddle action of things.
Before you do that, Brian,
go
you
ahead.
see that there's a question in the chat that basically says, did you get a play that was reviewable? Let's say pass fumble, and then also created a targeting call on the play, or maybe noticed in the review that there were 12 players on defense. Have you had any of those situations? I'm gonna change the question after you answer this first question. Were you aware of anything like that in your league last year?
It's a good thing you asked that, because before the season started, I asked our supervisor anyway that if once we went to the review, could we review the entire play, and the answer was no. So if we were looking at so as a catch no catch, but could it have been a fumble and then a recovery, like there are ways that you might have multiple things that are all reviewable happen in a span of 3 or 4 seconds. We can't do all of it. We are limited into what was challenged, and that's what we review. So if we had a challenge for a targeting and then I go under and go, oh crap, that should have been an incomplete pass too, I don't get to do both. I get to review the targeting, I limit it to the targeting, and then I move on. Very different. I'm glad someone asked that. Very different from what you all do in Division 1 level, where literally everything's on the table. We don't have the time to spend, and I don't have the angles. Like I'm not watching every camera angle from start to finish. I need to go look at what was challenged and then get done with it. So there you go.
Great, thanks. That was going to be my next question, was could you go for other things, but you answered that. So moving on.
All right. Glad I could answer questions before they're asked. So I have 3 plays that I pulled up. All three I was involved with. So I will be completely honest, it is better quality on the iPad than it ever is on Huddle. Not entirely certain why that is, but the ability to zoom in on this and even just the straight play is much clearer on the iPad. So you might be looking at this and going, how on earth do you make a ruling? Trust me, it's just better on the iPad. So in this one, it was a ruling. Well, I'll let you watch the play quickly. It's pretty obvious what the ruling is. So umpire rules an incomplete pass. It did not take long. If you saw the way the player reacted, he comes up with his, I've caught this ball, and he was pretty adamant and convinced his coach, yep, I'm going to go ahead and challenge this play, right? This is the angle that starts for us, and again, with sideline and SkyCoach, the way we can do it, we can get to that moment in time. You don't have to watch through all of this back and forth and back and forth. You can get to, okay, right now I will have stopped it, and I'm going to go very much like we do here on Huddle. I can do just this kind of slow. Sometimes. Just this frame by frame slow, and watch the ball go in. So I've got his hands underneath the ball. I then lose it behind these players. And so this is I won't flip back to the sideline view, in part because I'd have to go find it again. This is where I'm like, did he complete the process of catch? He's clearly going to the ground. Did the ball move? He's clearly got his hands underneath. And so I switched to the other side, blew it up nice and big, and saw the ball never moved. And so this is one of the few that we actually, well, not few, 25 of the 54 that we reviewed. This is one of the one that I did overturn. And it took us about 2 minutes from, again, what our standard of timing was from the time I come out and say, and finish saying the previous play is under the further review, our back judge started the timer. I went in, I reviewed it, and I came back out. And then when I finally blew the ready for play for the next play, that's when the timer stopped. And that was about 2 minutes about every time we did it. So this is the most common one we had. If you looked at, if we were to go back to the slideshow presentation about, what was the most challenged thing? The most challenged thing had something to do with catch, no catch, whether it was, catching the field of play like this, or a sideline, or an end zone. All of it had to do, most of them had to do with that. So part of what you're going to need to do as this process, again, looking at it as a replay official, is also opening it up to grading the way we did it last year. And we went through quick ref and got graded just like we did any other play that had a foul on it. We put in a special and said, okay, what do we think? And again, it's tougher as a grader because you can't do the same things we could on the field. That's that point, sorry. This was the first challenge I had in the entire season. This is opening weekend. Coaches are all brand new to it. And I also confirmed the field, we'll call them the field on this one. They were challenging whether or not the passer was beyond the line of scrimmage when he threw the pass. You hope that a down the line look is not totally necessary, and in this case, I would hope everyone looking at this would agree with me that this took me about 10 seconds of review time by getting it up and getting to the spot and saying, oh, he's releasing the pass and his foot is 2.5 full yards behind the line of scrimmage. This is easy. You hope they're all that easy. And again, it goes about that fast. That's about how quick once you get to the 10, how long it takes. This one was a little more a little more time. But again, it's another catch, no catch. And obviously, this is the one we know we're all going to have. And I don't know that you can guess. So if you're with a coach and he's like, that can't be, and I want to challenge that, which side of which one are you going to tell him about the end zone view? Which side do you think he's going to be more likely to challenge? If it's looking down at it right there on that spot or from a long distance?
Probably closer.
Yeah. And so he got lucky, but then unlucky in that the end zone view that we have for this play is right where we're headed. And so we did just this same thing, got to the spot where it's the catch, no catch, come in slow. And this is actually really a good angle. We have firm control of the ball. His foot is down there. I went back and forth many times on this one to see his toe come down. But where it is, you might very well get this is the kind of challenge you kind of, again, look at and go, where are we at? Where are we at? There's the touch. You can blow that up. I blew this up and saw his toe bend just enough. You can see it touch. Like these are the kind of reviews that you hope you get. Anything that's not as clear as this one or the other two, the other ones are all going to be stands. And so, again, of the ones that we had that we're not targeting, most of them were just like, okay, that was an easy one. So we had lots of confirmed. We also had about the same number as just stands, very few overturned. So just a handful of plays. I have every other play that we called in the MIAA. I don't necessarily know what they all are. But at this point, it's been about the time I wanted to. So I'll open it up to any questions anyone has about the replay process in general. What's it look like? Everything from the mechanics of it to the system. So yeah, curious what questions are out there.
Brian, this is Todd Thomas. I'm in the Gulf South. We're using the system for the first time this year. Did you all have any plays in the conference last year where a coach initiated a challenge or a targeting call was made and we're going under the hood and the referee gets over there and the system for whatever reason is spazzing out or doesn't have the play at all, or the referee's not able to find the play? Did you all have any of those instances during the season last year?
That's a great question. So only once for me personally. Most of the time these systems are really, really good, short of the kid that's operating the camera simply not clicking record. It's pretty reliable. So for the most part, no, we didn't have that problem. The one time I did, we had a lightning delay and it messed with the entire system. And so getting it set up, we didn't have it the entire first half. And so rather than letting the coaches challenge something and have me go underneath it, I just kept turning back to the athletic director and saying, okay, do we have it yet? And I'd turn and look and he'd give me a not yet. And so we just let the coaches know. And as soon as we had it back up and running, use the O2O and say, okay, we're back, we're good. In theory, if we were to have gone and I didn't know that it wasn't working, I would come back out, make an announcement. After there was no video to review, therefore the Pittsburgh State head coach will get his timeout and his challenge back, and the previous play stands as called. It's all we can do. If there's no video at all, we just give them all back and move on. If there is video and it's just terrible, like there may be that squirrely side, you saw that in even one of those plays, that doesn't count as a operator error. It's like, that's our video, take it or leave it, you lose your challenge. I hope that answers your question, Todd.
It does. Thank you.
I think there's a lot, there's a lot of that you have to think about just from not just, even in D1 games, the camera's in the wrong spot. It's not looking at the right thing. We have a handheld, but the handhelds decide they want to shoot crowd shots, and they're not where you want them to be, even when the referees go into the 110-minute meeting and like coach them up to be at the line to gain on 3rd and 4th down, and they're just not there. And so, we're still going to get what we get. But yeah, I think we'd do the same thing if the system was down, Brian, frankly, except we'd probably know ahead of time without having to go over there.
Yeah, your RO is going to be like, hey guys, we got nothing. So
we got nothing. So I'm going back to the buffet or something.
Right.
Did you get that question? You see that question in the
chat?
I
see that question. How did we ensure we didn't go egregiously long? So because we didn't always take the back judge with us last year, it was his responsibility to give me a time. So when I got there, I didn't want it at the 1 minute, but I wanted it a minute and a half, because typically I was at the table reviewing it within 20 to 30 seconds. I'm not like lightning speed or anything, but I can get to a table in a reasonable amount of time. And so when they said minute 30, I was like, okay, I'm stewing on this too long. I'm just going to make a decision. And what we did with all of that was, if it's really taking you that long to make a decision and you get to that 2 minutes and they say, spend 2 minutes, this has to be stands. And that's just what we did. Like, if you get to that 2 minute mark and you go, I can't make a decision, you go with stands, you get out in the field and you move on. And so this year it's still going to be the back judge that keeps the time, because their job is to stand there and, not necessarily each referee is going to be different. I'm not a guy that says you speak when spoken to kind of guy, but more or less the decision's on me. I may turn and say, what do you think about this? And then they can give me some feedback and input. But some official, whether it's the person in the tent with you or on the field as the back judge, needs to be timing it and needs to say it over the O2L. So another good question.
Any other questions? All right. Well, Brian, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of go through with this, with everybody today. I think that's going to be helpful. I know that I'm sure even if you're doing the SkyCoach thing in your conference, I'm sure you've had your clinic, and I'm sure you've talked. Well, if you haven't had your clinic by now, I don't really know what to tell you, but I'm sure you had some senses of how things are going to work for you, but I do think it's helpful to get a more grounded, we've done this once and this is how it worked for us perspective. Because I would agree with you. I've worked in indoor leagues where they have us available for review, and if I have to look at a play 3 times, it's probably going to be stands, right?
Just leave it alone. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go. Just for everybody's benefit, we will not meet the week of Labor Day because 1, it's a holiday, and 2, it's week 1. So our next meeting will be the 3rd week of September. I'm still working on locking down a presenter and a presentation, but our first meeting in October will be plays from the first month. So if you've got a play that you want to share, and I put the link to this spreadsheet in the email that I sent out this week, and this is an example of what I want in that from previous years. If you're a COC official, tell me where in Exos it is. If you're a Division I official or another league that has DV Sport access and it's on DV Sport, tell me that too. If it's not one of those things, you're probably going to have to tell me that I've got a huddle play, and I will turn it over to you at the meeting. But the goal is just for us to have opportunities to share plays and discuss and try to improve. We'll probably do one of those in October and one of those in November. So if you had a play here and we don't get to your play because we have a bunch, that's great. We'll throw it in the hopper for later in the year. We're still looking for presenters for late October and probably our last meeting in November. So if that appeals to you, please don't hesitate to sign up. But that's all I've got for tonight. I know that we will not have another meeting before the season starts. So I hope everybody gets a chance to get out there and get the season started off on the right foot. Wishing everybody best of luck. Hopefully the ball bounces in the right direction for you. So thanks, Brian, and thanks everybody for being on. Best of luck this year, and we will see everybody soon. Thanks.
Good luck, everybody.